Hi, everybody. Name is Jose Patiño. I'm here alone, as you can tell. Um, but we're here to talk about a couple of the topics. One of them is around the new changes around FAFSA, student loan repayment, as well as some of the immigration bills have been here in Arizona, and as well as the national news around some of the people who are getting arrested, including a Dreamer 90-year-old from Georgia, as well as DHS $1,000 program to incentivize self-deportation. So, traditionally speaking, we're going to talk about our lunch. And this time I didn't have tacos, so I'm a little bit sad, but I did have a delicious, I think it was a pasta and a chicken and sauces. It was delicious, but I'm always missing my tacos. Okay, without further notice, we're going to get to first topic around dun, 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 the executive order that President Trump announced a few weeks ago targeting state tuition for Dreamers. Um, One of the things that people have asked us, can he do this? And yes, he can write an executive order. Is the executive order lawful? Our understanding, speaking with attorneys locally here as well as national attorneys, is that it's not lawful. Right now in Arizona, Prop 308, again, Arizona voters in 2022 voted decisively in support allowing undocumented students and DACA recipients to be able to pay the same tuition rate as their peers so long as they lived in the state at least 2 years and graduated from Arizona high school or equivalent and were enrolled for 2 years. So I know that there is some concerns with people, but so far that we know of, again, make sure to keep enrolled. The Prop 308 is still law. If you live in a state like California or another state like New York, you're still going to be able to do so. I think this is going to go to the courts before it gets resolved, and the courts are going to say that the states that affirmatively pass a policy like the state of Arizona did with Prop 308 will be able to allow document students to be able to have access to in-state tuition, so long as they meet that requirement in eligibility. I think part of the executive order is to target those Republican states that offer in-state tuition. Again, immigration, specifically Dreamers and in-state tuition for undocumented students, wasn't this big political thing a few years ago, pre-Trump. And a lot of states, actually, the first couple of states that offer in-state tuition for undocumented students were those conservative states like Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. So my concern is that those states could potentially now feel the pressure to remove their in-state provisions for undocumented students and DACA recipients. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but that's a concern. I know we've been talking with other folks, figure out what can we do. So far, we'll keep at it. But if you're an undocumented student or you have a child who's an undocumented student or a DACA recipient and they want to go to college, they still can. Make sure to encourage them and keep doing so. The next segment that we're going to talk about a little bit is around President Trump's and Secretary Kristi Noem's plan to incentivize people to self-deport. They're offering $1,000 and they'll pay for the flight if you signed the deportation order and then leave. According to President Trump, already one person from Honduras has already signed it. Nobody knows, can verify this information. It's part of the strategy that the Trump administration has created, which is attrition. And attrition is basically make the conditions so unwelcoming or so harsh that people ultimately self-deport. And the reason they have this strategy is because, again, there's about between 11 to 13 to 15 million people who are undocumented. There's several more million people who have some status or in between. And the administration has taken the stance that they don't believe those people should be here, even if it means deporting them and separating their families. So what they have done, and they know they don't have the resources and going through the legal processes because here in the country, again, as far as we know it, so okay, uh, pretend that was good. Immigrants have due process, and and they have the right in court to go through the process, see a judge, get an audience, and plead their case. So Trump administration knows if they're trying to accomplish this mass deportations that they're talking about, it's either violation the U.S. Constitution, which they tried and the courts are stopping them from, or create incentives for people to self-deport. And the last one is to make the conditions so hard for people to deport themselves. It's similar, that's part of the strategy that the Trump administration did on January 20 with eliminating the sensitive areas memo. It's why some states are being pushed to, like Tennessee, to challenge Pryor versus Doe, like the right for public education K to 12 for undocumented students. That's part of it. If your children who are undocumented can enroll in school, is that a country that you want to live in? Is the other reason why we've seen so many ICE agents going into schools or uh, creating this environment so students don't feel safe they can learn in schools, or arresting families outside of church. And now here in Arizona, we have this bill called SB 1268 that the House and the Senate passed, sent it to the governor. We're asking the governor to veto because this bill would ask hospitals and medical centers to check the patient's immigration status before they can serve them. They still will be not denied service, but they want to gather the information, the data. I know growing up undocumented, going to the legal system, going to the medical system, is overall is just, even before this law, even if this policy becomes law before this, you're afraid because you don't understand how the system works. There's some big words that you don't get. It's not accessible, and this is part of the strategy. Again, hopefully, Governor House vetoes it because, as she has said, she wants to create a state where we focus on solving issues, not take culture wars like currently the president is doing. The next topic that we want to cover is around FAFSA and higher education. So at the federal level, right now, the Congress is debating the budget reconciliation for the fiscal year 2026. And according to the process, the Republicans in the House can pass it with a simple majority of 218, and the Senate with 50 votes, plus if it's a tie, Vice President J.D. Vance can break the tie. So right now, the Republicans have to negotiate amongst themselves. They don't have to talk to Democrats. And one of the issues that at least we're monitoring closely is education, right? We already saw the executive order dismantling the Department of Education. We have seen how now the student loans system is it's going to go to the Small Business Administration, still going to remain there. Currently, if you're a high school senior or if you are in college and haven't completed the FAFSA is still there. I encourage you to complete it. I know there is some worries from families in terms of if you're a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, but you have one or two undocumented parents. I know there are concerns. Again, I still believe higher education. I still believe that if you were to complete it, and if ICE were to use that information to target your parents or your family, that is something that the American public would not stand for. Something that we as Aliento would support. But I understand that it's a personal decision. But part of that other piece is that on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, which is not Mexican Independence Day, as many people believe, a student loan repayment process began. It was paused for the last 5 years. Now, the current Trump administration is asking student loan borrowers to start paying again. There's about 43.2 million people who have a student loan. That is almost 13% of the population in the US. Currently, about 10 million people are in danger of being in default. 5.3 million are already in default, and about 200,000 people who have student loan. They're going to have to start to garnish their wages, or if they have a federal tax return, the government is going to confiscate that. So I know several people that we work with and several of my friends are worried because it's something that for the last 5 years, they have been able to kind of focus on paying it down or saving up for a mortgage or rainy day fund. Now people are going to have to start paying it back. And to give context to people, the average student loan debt for an undergraduate, that's somebody who has a bachelor's degree, is close to $30,000. That is a lot of money. And a lot of the other processes that people were using, like working at a nonprofit for 10 years or being a teacher for 10 years or working for a government agency, some of those are shifting and changing. So stay up to date because maybe if you were, as I know I'm a former teacher, so some of my former friends who were teachers and who had been making their payments for 10 years and had been teaching, they were able to get their student loan forgiven. Some of that's going to be changing, so please stay up to date. But again, the other piece of it this is still not law. So this is the stuff that I say right now. It's something that is already happening. The next is a proposal from in Congress. They are thinking of eliminating the Department of Education budget by $330 billion over the next 3 years. That's $33 billion per year. What that means is a lot of stuff, layoffs, and how that would impact you is every time you have a big shift and a cut of staff, things fall through the cracks. So our concern is then if there's an issue with FAFSA or it's an issue that with the grants, there's not going to be people able to support. The other piece within that is that the Pell Grant eligibility, the proposal right now is to full-time, instead of being 12 hours, 12 student credit hours, moving up to 15 credit hours or minimum for a semester. And then also eliminating the Pell Grant for part-time students. And again, that's going to impact mostly community college. Again, about half of the community college students here in Arizona, but also in the country, are part-time students. Again, a lot of people going to community college is because they're working and they're trying to advance their career and they need some training. So that's something that is really important. So we're going to keep monitoring. And lastly, we have some couple of difficulty news, right? So one of the things that we've been talking about is making sure that people, if you're undocumented, or if you live with undocumented folks, to make sure to limit your travel if possible, because what we're seeing right now is people being pulled over. And if you're undocumented, like we have one of the stories, her name is Ximena, she's a student, community college student in Georgia, 19 years old, not eligible for the DACA program because it's closed. She was pulled over, and right now she's in a detention center. She's still, her whole family thankfully has raised, I think, close to $40,000. There's a lot of community support to help her out and her family, because her dad is also was arrested for a traffic violation 2 weeks prior. And something that I'm very closely familiar to here in the state of Arizona when I was fully undocumented. That happened to me often, and that was my worry when getting pulled over. And thankfully, I was never arrested, but I know the fear. And it's one of the reasons, at least when I was a student in high school, one of the that really shocked me was a student from my high school. Her name was Virginia. And that was a posters that was like, "Where's Virginia?" Because ultimately she was arrested, detained, and then deported. At that time, we didn't have social media to learn all the stories. All I knew was her name. So again, people, be careful when you're driving. Again, sometimes because of the way the country is set up and where we live is, we have to commute and we have to drive. But that is the number one that you encounter immigration authority, is through traffic violations. Especially if you live in a state or a city where they have a 287G agreement with ICE, which means that local police can collaborate with ICE. And I think the last thing, at least for which at least gives them hope, is that we have seen some conservatives from Georgia speaking out against it, and some saying that they feel betrayed because, well, they supported the Trump administration going after the bad people, right? The Trump administration is going after everybody who's undocumented. Again, you don't have to hear from me; you have to hear from them. Again, so for us, it's so important that we make sure that that we take care of ourselves. Make sure that we have a defense and deportation plan. You can go to Aliento on our website and resources. We have one of those. Make sure that you have your emergency contact information, and the people who have your emergency contact information, they know in case something the worst happens. And if you're a student, continue your education. If you come from a mixed status family, I know that you don't want to put your parents in danger and all these things that are happening. But I think so long as we continue to further ourselves, don't hide back, don't try to go into the shadows. Some folks, especially our parents, have to, but especially if you are a U.S. citizen, please take that and be an ally. And this is the time to step up. We live in a difficult time. For me, I think for immigrants, this is the harshest time that I lived in. And I lived through the 70 years, the George Powell years, the immigration rates, and I feel that this is the toughest time. So please be in community. Don't be by yourself. And if you can help other people, even if it's just, hey, how are you doing? Or like taking people out to coffee or to eat or buying them a taco. I'm always down for a taco. So if you want to help me out, buy me a taco. So please, again, know you're not alone. Difficult times, and take care.